adding in the pegs to work with the pegs, one of the first things we need to do is to rebuild our network view. It's easier to do it in a large window, so I'm going to click on the arrow up here and add in my network. Now that I have the network view, I need to add pegs so that I can link my pieces together. Linking my pieces together will allow me to animate my character properly. So I can just marquee, click and drag to select my pieces, or I can run command and click on the sections that I want. The keyboard shortcut for it is Command-Shift-P. That adds a peg for each one of the pieces. I could do one at a time, but when you have a bunch of layers, it's easier to do it as a unit. Now that I have added in those pegs, the way that it's going to work is the upper arm is going to control the lower arm. The lower arm is going to control the claw. So we can see how the lower arm controls both the lower arm and the claw. So that allows me to set that up. So that now gives me my linkage that I need for those parts. Now if I go back to the camera view, this is where now I will need to set up my pivot point. So I will then click on my rotate animation tool, and it always defaults in the middle of the screen, but I'll want it to rotate for the claw more at the wrist. I'm going to set the tool properties so it only selects pegs, because that now will allow me when I'm clicking not to worry about clicking. If I click on artwork, it doesn't actually select the artwork. But leaving your network view open in the side is always a very useful technique, because then you can just know which peg you have clicked on. So now I've clicked on the claw, I'll move that joint to the wrist. Now I'll click on the lower arm and move that joint to the elbow. I'll click on the upper arm and move my joint up to the shoulder. So now that the pivot points have been configured so that I can move that arm, that adjusts that. If I move my way down the chain, you can see how that moves the lower arm with the claw. Now that just moves the claw itself. The easiest way to then animate this in the timeline is to collapse the whole grouping. So you can see how the whole grouping is collapsed. And I click at that first frame and I just hit F6 to force in a keyframe. Now I'll go further out in the timeline, extend it out with F5, so that now extends out, so the arm is sitting there. Now if I want this arm to move, if we see that we have our first keyframe, now at the next keyframe I am going to drop the arm down a little bit, and now I can move down my chain of pegs using Shift B. And it sometimes works and sometimes gets a little bit funky. But now when I hit B, it goes back up the chain. So now if I rotate that up, then go to the next keyframe and rotate that down, and we can now start to see how we're getting movement occurring. You don't have to worry that you're not seeing full movement occurring between each keyframe because I just moved it. If that is bothersome that you can't see the lines occurring, then all you have to do is just hit F6, and that will say everything gets a keyframe from spot to spot. So now I move to this frame here, and if I want to rotate the arm up, I can rotate the arm up. And at that point, if I also want the arm to go up but not all of the arm, so I have some flexibility as it opens itself out. And at this point the animation becomes your choice to figure out what you need to bring your object to life. And all I've done is rotation here, but I could just as easily now decide that not only is rotation occurring, but as the arm has moved here, I can then at this point move it. So we can see how it moves down. Can go here, hit F6, rotate it over, and I'm going to pull it up. I want to bend it and really bend that claw down so it stays a little bit more on screen. So it's starting to feel a little bit alive as it's joined together. So by combining together the auto patch that we configured, so we're getting our patch sandwich, along with the pegs, I start to create a much more naturalistic, continuous animation, and it starts looking less cut out and almost more full hand drawn. Good luck and have fun.